What's the quickest you've ever seen a new coworker get fired? The ball clapping incident at Best Buy. Back in 2010, I was working at Best Buy during the holiday season when we hired this new guy. It was only his second day on the job, and things went downhill quickly. I was kneeling down, organizing games on the bottom shelf, when he came up to me and said, "Hey, check this out!" Then he started bouncing up and down. At first, I didn't know what the hell was going on, but then I started hearing a distinct clap, clap, clap sound. Confused, I looked up, and there it was. His balls were making that noise. No joke, he was somehow able to get his balls to clap like that, and it was right at my eye level since I was kneeling. Part of me, being a 20-year-old dude, thought it was both horrifying and hilarious in a, "what the fuck, is this actually happening?" kind of way. But here's the kicker. He didn't just do it to me. Oh no, this dude went around the store showing everyone, and eventually, some of the girls reported him for sexual harassment. He was fired not long after that. To this day, I have no idea how he managed to get his balls to make that noise. I've even tried to recreate it throughout my life. Don't judge, but I just can't figure it out. The clapping was so loud. I'll never forget it. You won't believe the wildest first day fails people shared. From sleeping under desks to Pokemon card heists, these are next level. Drop a comment if you've seen anything crazier, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more jaw-dropping stories. What's the most ridiculous thing you've witnessed at work? The hairdryer excuse. I once worked with a woman who was hired and immediately made an impression, for all the wrong reasons. On her first day, she called in and said her grandmother had passed away. That's an understandable excuse, right? The next day, she called again and said her car wouldn't start. Now we're starting to get a little suspicious, but hey, stuff happens. Then came the third day. She called in again, and this time her excuse was that her blow dryer broke, so she couldn't dry her hair and therefore couldn't come to work. At this point, no one knew whether to laugh or be annoyed. Needless to say, she never made it to work and was let go before she could even show up once. The no-show repeat offender. We hired a guy after 2 solid interviews. He was personable, well-dressed, and very experienced. He passed the background check and drug test, so everything seemed perfect. His first day rolls around, and no show, no call. At the end of the day, he finally calls in, apologizing profusely. Apparently, he had gotten the days mixed up and thought he was supposed to start later in the week. Annoying, but I let it slide and told him to come in the next day. Day 2? No show, no call. Again. At this point, I'm done. But right before closing, he shows up in person, literally begging not to be fired. He tells me he has a family to support, and this job is perfect for him. Against my better judgment, I give him one more chance and say, "If you don't show up tomorrow, don't bother contacting me again." You guessed it. He didn't show up the next day, and I never heard from him again. It was like something straight out of a comedy sketch. The anime website predicament. I used to work for an anime website aimed at young teens. We hired this new engineer, and on his very first day, he casually mentioned to our IT guy that he needed to install some monitoring software on his work laptop. The IT guy was confused and asked why, to which the new guy explained that he was a convicted child predator and had court-ordered monitoring of all his online activity. None of this had been disclosed during the interview process or on his job application. As soon as that came to light, he didn't even get a chance to touch the laptop. He was walked out the door immediately. You can imagine how fast that news spread around the office. No one could believe it. The sexting trainee gone wrong. We had this guy who was hired as a favor to his parents. They were friends with the head of the agency, so he got a job as a dispatcher trainee. Right from the start, he was annoying, always trying too hard to impress people. But what really crossed the line was when he started bragging about sexting an underage girl. Not only that, he showed the messages to sworn officers, like he thought it was funny or something. That was it for him. He went from being an employee to a client in no time flat. Refusing safety gear on day 1. A guy got hired at our company and straight up refused to wear any safety gear on his first day. The supervisor told him to put it on, and he flat out said, "No." No explanation, no compromise. The supervisor didn't hesitate. He fired him before the guy even made it to his first coffee break. If someone's that dead set against wearing safety gear on day 1, it's a clear sign they're going to be a nightmare down the road. PPE denial, a terrible hill to die on. I'll never understand why some people refuse to wear PPE. I've seen debris fly at high speed, bouncing off safety glasses or face shields, and your brain reacts asterisk after asterisk the impact. I've had a few close calls myself, and if I wasn't wearing proper gear, I might not even be here to talk about it. Yet somehow, there are people who are determined to risk their health over something as basic as safety equipment. It's baffling. The machinist with the magnet? There was this one machinist I knew who refused to wear safety glasses. One day, I got something tiny in my eye, probably an eyelash, and he proudly told me that he kept a strong magnet in his toolbox to pull metal splinters out of his eyes. He even offered to let me borrow it. He said he used it every few weeks and couldn't understand why more people didn't have one. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Like, dude, that's not something to be proud of. That's terrifying. Metal splinters in eyes, a nightmare. Just the thought of metal splinters in someone's eyes is enough to make me shudder. I'm cringing just writing about it. And the fact that some people would rather deal with that than wear safety glasses? It's beyond me. I can't help but imagine how many times that guy had to fish metal out of his eyes, and how much worse it could have been if he wasn't lucky enough to have a magnet handy. The guy stomping cardboard in a compactor. At my job, we hired a guy who seemed to have no concept of safety. One day, I looked outside where the cardboard compactor was, and there he was. Inside the compactor, stomping down the cardboard. This was despite the numerous signs plastered all over the place saying not to get inside. Other employees had nearly been written up for just leaning in too far, and this guy was inside it. When our manager told him to stop, he basically shrugged and said he didn't care, and he'd keep doing what he wanted. How he didn't get fired on the spot is beyond me, but I'm glad he eventually disappeared. He wasn't just reckless, he was gross, always combative, and constantly making misogynistic remarks about women's weight. Honestly, I have no idea if he quit or got fired, but I can't imagine anyone missing him. The tricycle obsession. Back when I worked in data entry, there was a tricycle in the office. It was one of those quirky, fun ideas from management to lighten the mood, since they were all super chill people. But this one girl who got hired around the same time as me took it to a whole new level. Instead of actually working, she would just ride that tricycle around the office all day, every single day. Every morning, while the rest of us logged into our computers, she'd jump right on the tricycle and just ride around, talking to people until it was time for her lunch break. It was honestly hilarious, but also kind of annoying because, we were there to actually do work. The day she got fired, she had to be escorted out of the building because she was screaming, "You're targeting me unfairly!" as if she was being persecuted for something other than her endless tricycle antics. The whole office was cracking up. Tricycle drama. This story quickly became a running joke in the office. One coworker joked, "I feel like you're only here for the tricycle." And honestly, it wasn't far from the truth. Another quipped, "All she does is eat quickly just so she can get back to the tricycle." The best part was when someone said, "You're too rough with it. You're always tugging on the tricycle." It was like the office had its own little sitcom centered around this one girl and her obsession with that tricycle. Born to trike, forced to work. One comment that still gets thrown around was, "Born to trike, forced to work." It was the perfect summary of her entire employment there. In hindsight, she was like the office's version of the Saw guy, riding her tricycle through the cubicles, except no puzzles, just avoiding work at all costs. The blunt smoker. Then there was this one time during training when a new hire asked where she could go for a smoke break. I pointed out the designated smoking area just outside. But instead of taking a normal cigarette, she walked right outside in front of all the supervisors and lit up the biggest blunt you've ever seen. She was walked out of the building 5 minutes later. No surprise there. Chill place until it wasn't. She must have thought the place was hella chill right up until the moment she was fired. Another coworker couldn't believe it, commenting, "She definitely showed up already baked if she thought that was a good idea for her first day." The best part? She didn't seem to realize that not everyone was on her level of chill and rolled up her blunt in plain sight. The colorblind missile guy? But nothing compares to the guy who got hired at a job where you had to read color-coded schematics. Somehow, this guy got through the hiring process even though he was colorblind. No one realized it until he spent an entire day working on a $20,000 missile cable, only for QC to say it was the most fucked up example of a connector they had ever seen. The next day, he admits, "Yeah, I'm colorblind. Can I keep the job?" Well, they let him go, but they kept his messed up connector on display in HR as a reminder of why you need to stick to the hiring procedures. The fact that someone who was colorblind ended up building parts for missiles still blows my mind. The six-figure Unix admin disaster. Back in the mid-1990s, I hired a guy for a senior Unix systems admin role. The job description, interview process, and onboarding all made it very clear that this position required being on call a few nights a month, which, by the way, came with a six-figure salary. This wasn't some low-tier role. It was a prime job with all the perks: a company laptop, a cell phone for on-call work, and the luxury of handling tasks from home. Not to mention, this was six figures back in the 90s. A literal jackpot! On his second day, the Unix lead admin wanted him to shadow an on-call evening so he could see how things ran outside of regular hours. Pretty standard stuff, right? That night, as luck would have it, I was working late when the help desk called me, saying they couldn't reach him to escalate an issue. His phone kept going to voicemail. So, naturally, I called him myself. Same thing. Voicemail. That's when things got weird. I found his home number and gave him a ring. When he picked up, his immediate response was, "Why the fuck are you calling me at home?" And then he just hung up. At first, I thought it was a misunderstanding, so I called back. Nope. Same aggressive attitude, same hang-up. I notified the lead admin that our new hire wouldn't be joining him for the on-call shadowing, or ever. By the next morning, HR was waiting for him at the front desk, ready to send him packing. We disabled all his system access, and that was that. How to fumble a sweet gig. This was the dream job. One commenter put it perfectly. That's one way to fumble a really pleasant job. And that's no exaggeration. Another user couldn't believe it either, chiming in, 6 figures in the 90s was a sweet deal. To put it into perspective, another said, 6 figures now is a sweet deal. 6 figures in the 90s is the goddamn lottery. And they're right. This was the kind of job people would have killed for back then, and it wasn't just the salary. As I mentioned later in the thread, we had just had an IPO, the stock was booming, and everyone got new hire options that were rapidly worth more than their strike price. In short, this guy had hit the jackpot and decided to throw it all away in record time. Data center chaos. This whole incident reminded me of another time when I was working in network operations. We got an alarm for a data center issue with the sprinklers, and water was pouring on the server racks. I had to call the facilities manager at 5 a.m. California time, no less. My coworker initially called the VP in charge, who wasn't exactly pleased to be woken up at the crack of dawn. Since I had a bit of a reputation for being the department's no-nonsense guy, they asked me to call him back. I cut him off before he could start yelling again and calmly said, "Your data center is flooding, and water is pouring on the server racks." His immediate reaction? Holy shit! After that, the situation took a turn as he explained he was on his way to a football game with some friends. Yeah, it was 5 a.m. But hey, California's traffic is notorious. I offered to call his boss, the CSO, and he was more than happy to let me handle it. He later apologized to the original caller and even gave me a shout-out to my boss. At least that one had a happy ending, unlike the unfortunate Unix admin saga. The restaurant no-show drama. I hired my friend's sister as a hostess at our restaurant, thinking, what could go wrong? Well, apparently a lot. She called off her first shift 3 hours later, claiming she had a tough period. Okay, fine. Things happen, right? But 30 minutes into what was supposed to be her dinner shift, she starts posting pics on Instagram of her partying. In Canada, we live in New York . The sheer audacity. I fired her through Instagram. Like, how else do you deal with someone who never even worked a day? But that's not even the wildest part. She tried to claim unemployment, which, by the way, was laughable, and then her father called me, trying to threaten me into rehiring her. I mean, come on. The kicker? She was 34. Not a teenager. 34 . Sounds like a real-life Mona Lisa Saperstein, right? Someone even commented, "You hired Mona Lisa Saperstein?" And honestly, it felt like I did. The trucker who drove 800 miles to get fired. Day 4 of orientation, and this guy's already on thin ice. I'd just been hired by a trucking company, and orientation was pretty straightforward. Just show up, stay awake, and pretend to pay attention. But apparently, this one dude didn't get the memo. He drove himself 800 miles to the company's HQ, and by day one, he's already telling everyone how he forgot to keep his receipts and better get reimbursed. Like, okay man, maybe keep that to yourself? On day 2, he missed the shuttle, had to drive himself, and then, fell asleep during the actual orientation. On day 3, he missed the shuttle again and was over an hour late. When the instructor angrily asked for his full name, we all knew he was done. By day 4, he showed up on time, but the damage was done. That night, I saw him loading his stuff into his car at the hotel. He got canned. Dude literally drove 800 miles to get fired and had to drive another 800 miles back. That's gotta be one of the longest, most brutal drives of shame ever. The party happy truckers went to a 10-day orientation training session for a trucking company. Honestly, the setup was top-notch. Per diem cards, fully furnished condos, catered meals, and even passes for local activities like bowling and movies. It was pretty cushy for a trucking gig. You could even go home on weekends, with the company covering the cost. But, as it turns out, some people just don't appreciate what they have. On day 3, 3 of my roommates got fired. Why? They invited half a strip club back to the company condo and threw a party that lasted well into the night. They showed up the next morning, still plastered from the night before. The company had warned us, several times, about respecting the leased condos and not having any non-employees in them. These guys clearly weren't paying attention, and they got kicked to the curb before the week was even out. The new cannabis farm hire who couldn't handle it. New guy at the cannabis farm asked me if he could smoke during lunch. I gave him the standard spiel. It's against the state rules, and if I can tell you're high, it's a big problem. Otherwise, it's none of my business. Fair enough, right? So, after lunch, I see him leaning on his shovel. No biggie, we all need a break now and then. 5 minutes pass, and he's still in the same spot. 10 minutes later, and he hasn't moved an inch. I walk over to check on him, and he's mumbling incoherently. Turns out the guy was hitting a *DMT vape on his first day. How he thought that was a good idea, I'll never know, but needless to say, he didn't make it to day 2. From missed shifts and unnecessary parties to getting high on the job, it's incredible how fast some people can ruin a good opportunity. The locked conference room nap. It was the second day of orientation, and the new guy was supposed to sit in a conference room and read through binders of important info. The boss walks out, closes the door, and we all go about our day. But later, the boss notices the conference room doors are locked and the blinds are closed. Nobody knows why. Security gets called to open the door, and there's the new guy, kicked back with the lights off, asleep. He had closed the blinds and locked the door like it was his personal nap zone. Of course, he was out of there by the end of the day. Talk about not even trying. The Zoom nap king. A few days into his new job, and this guy manages to make a fool of himself during a company-wide Zoom meeting at 10 a.m. Not only did he turn his camera on which was optional, but he was lying down in bed, shirtless, holding his phone above him like he was about to scroll through TikTok. When confronted, his excuse? Nobody told me what our working hours are. Dude, if the company has a meeting scheduled during the day, maybe don't assume it's nap time. Needless to say, he wasn't around for much longer after that. The Pokemon card thief. I worked at electronics boutique in the 90s, and we hired this kid for Christmas help. Definitely one of the strangest people I've ever met. On his very first shift, he just sat behind the counter, tearing open packs of Pokemon cards. When the manager confronted him, he yelled, "I'm going to pay for them! Duh!" Not surprisingly, he was walked out about 15 seconds later. I'm pretty sure he never even made it to his first break. A real-life example of how not to make it through your first day on the job. Nap under the desk. This dude was hired, and 2 days into the job, he decided to take a nap. Under his desk. It was 10 a.m. The guy was about 6'5", so his legs were sticking out into the aisle for everyone to see. The CEO walked by, shook his head in disbelief, and by noon, the guy was gone. It's one thing to sneak a nap at work, but at least try to be discreet. Creepy new guy. On his very first shift, This guy started following the high school girls around and inviting them over to his house or offering them rides. Asterisk fired that day asterisk. Thank goodness management took it seriously and acted fast. It's rare to see such swift action, but in this case, it was totally warranted. The deckhand who feared water. I used to work as a deckhand for a tugboat company on the Mississippi River, and you wouldn't believe how many people took jobs like that while being asterisk deathly afraid of water asterisk. The training period was 2 weeks, but about a third of the new hires didn't even make it past the first week. 1 minute you're heading to your first job, and the next, the new guy is freaking out, begging the captain to turn the boat around and take him back to the dock. Being afraid of water on a tugboat job? That's like being afraid of heights as a pilot.